It begins in silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that feels like the whole world has stepped away from you and left you alone in the void. You're not sure when it started, but suddenly life feels different. Your name still rings out the same, but your energy no longer fits into the people, places, or plans you once clung to. It's as if something deep within you has shifted, as if an ancient part of you has been activated without your consent. And you're not crazy. You're not broken. You're not dramatic. You are being transformed because the path of the dark chosen one has begun. And with it, these 5 energy changes appear like spiritual earthquakes, shaking everything you thought you knew. You probably didn't ask for this. You didn't meditate under a waterfall or chant in the desert to become a dark chosen one. It chose you, or rather you chose it before you were ever born. You agreed to carry a frequency that would disrupt the illusions of the world. You agreed to walk in the shadows, not to become the darkness, but to master it, to transmute it. And now, that agreement has been activated. That's why nothing feels the same anymore. That's why people start leaving, friends become strangers, and your inner world begins to erupt like a volcano beneath calm waters. You're not being punished, you're being prepared. The first energy shift is isolation. Not just physical solitude, but energetic exile. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. Conversations feel hollow. Social events feel draining. You start to notice that you can no longer tolerate surface-level connections. This is not rejection, it's redirection. The universe is pulling you inward, forcing you to face what's been buried. The silence becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, you begin to remember who you are. You're not here to blend in, you're here to wake up. And you can't do that surrounded by noise.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But this isolation also comes with pain. Emotional breakdowns, sudden anxiety, or even rage that feels like it doesn't belong to you. That's because it doesn't. You're purging. When you are a dark chosen one, your body becomes a temple of transmutation. You begin releasing ancestral patterns, karmic debris, and collective trauma. Most people will never understand it. They'll say you're too sensitive or too intense. But you're not just feeling your own emotions, you're feeling the weight of many timelines collapsing in your DNA. You are the endpoint of thousands of years of unresolved energy. And that's why it hurts. But that's why you're powerful. Let me ask you something dangerous. What if your suffering has always been sacred? What if your trauma wasn't weakness, but the initiation? What if every heartbreak, every betrayal, and every dark night of the soul was training? You wouldn't be here if you weren't equipped for this level of energetic warfare. Dark chosen ones are not ordinary souls. We are forged in chaos, sculpted by silence, and fueled by truth. We are not here to be liked, we are here to liberate. And sometimes that means being misunderstood, feared, or even hated. But truth doesn't need applause. It only needs embodiment. The second energy shift is perception. Your senses become amplified. You begin to see through people. You feel the energy of their words more than the words themselves. You can walk into a room and feel the residue of arguments, secrets, or grief. You wake up from dreams that feel more real than waking life. This is not imagination, it is remembrance. Your third eye is opening, whether you're ready or not. You are remembering how to read energy, how to decode frequency, how to track timelines. You notice synchronicities that others miss. You hear the whispers between the noise. And that's because your soul is operating beyond the five senses now. But this heightened perception is both a gift and a burden. You can no longer pretend. You can no longer fake a smile when your soul screams no. You can no longer tolerate lies, even well-intentioned ones. This can make you seem cold, harsh, or too much. But you're not here to make people comfortable, you're here to make them conscious. And to do that, you must first become ruthlessly honest with yourself. You begin to unmask your own illusions. You begin to see how often you betrayed your own truth just to keep the peace. And now, that version of you is dying. The third energy shift is magnetic repulsion. People who once loved you suddenly distance themselves. You start attracting strange reactions. Some people are drawn to you with fascination. Others avoid you like a mirror they don't want to face. That's because your energy has shifted. You are no longer operating from the solar level, you are emanating from the soul. And the soul doesn't play games. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't negotiate. It simply reflects. And when people aren't ready to see themselves, they run. That's not your fault. That's your power. This repulsion isn't just with people, it's with systems, structures, and routines. You can't go back to your old job, your old relationships, or your old habits without feeling like you're being spiritually suffocated. Everything that was built on falsehood begins to crumble. And that's terrifying. But it's also liberating. Because now you are being stripped down to your essence. And from that place, you can rebuild a life that's aligned with your true frequency, not the frequency you were programmed into, but the one you were born to embody. The fourth energy shift is energetic warfare. You begin to notice that you are being watched not just by people, but by forces. You wake up feeling drained. You sense entities in your space. You have nightmares that feel like battles. You feel sudden waves of fear or heaviness for no reason. This is not paranoia. This is spiritual reality. When you become a threat to the matrix retaliates. When you begin to unplug from illusion, the forces that feed on illusion try to pull you back. You're not imagining it. You're being tested. Not to break you, but to sharpen you. This is where many fall. They think that because the attacks increase, they must be doing something wrong. But the opposite is true. The resistance is confirmation. Darkness tests those who carry light because it recognizes the danger. And now you must learn to protect your energy like your life depends on it, because it does. You begin to cleanse your space. You begin to speak with authority. You begin to command your energy field. And in doing so, you reclaim your sovereignty. You remember that you are not just a soul, you are a flame. And no darkness can extinguish what was born of divine fire. But here's the real question. Are you willing to be feared in order to be free? Because freedom isn't cute. It's disruptive. It's raw. It's wild. And if you are truly walking the path of the dark chosen one, you will lose those who only loved your mask. That's the cost of sovereignty. But the reward is that you become untouchable, not because you never feel pain, but because you stopped identifying with it. You become a walking portal, You become a storm in stillness. You become the embodiment of what cannot be controlled. The fifth and final energy shift is divine neutrality. You no longer chase highs or avoid lows. You stop labeling things as good or bad. You begin to see energy as energy. You realize that even your darkest moments were encoded with light. You stop judging your path. You stop comparing your journey. You stop needing to be understood. You sit in the center of your being, unmoved by the chaos around you. And from that space, you wield true power. You become the eye of the storm. You walk through battles with peace in your heart. You speak truth not to be heard, but because it must be spoken. You no longer argue with ignorance. You no longer beg to be seen. You no longer shrink to fit into spaces that were never built for your frequency. You rise, silently, steadily, sovereignly. Not because you are better, but because you finally remember who you are. There's a moment, and you'll know it when it happens, when the chaos doesn't scare you anymore. When the loss, the silence, the unknown, it all becomes familiar. Not because you've given up, but because you've surrendered to something higher. That's when you know the transformation has taken root. As a dark chosen one, you don't just survive these 5 energy changes, you begin to wield them. They no longer feel like curses. They feel like codes. And that's when you start to realize you weren't here to fix your life. You were here to embody a new kind of energy that this world has never seen before. As you integrate the first wave of changes, your intuition becomes razor sharp. Not just a whisper in your ear, but a full body knowing. You feel shifts before they happen. You sense the lies behind smiles. You begin to see people's true energy before they open their mouths. This is not imagination, it's spiritual memory reactivating. You're not learning, you're remembering. The dark chosen ones are not here to be taught, they are here to awaken. That's why the world never made sense to you. It was never designed for your frequency. And now that frequency is beginning to override the matrix code, this is the point where you start to lose interest in proving yourself. You stop explaining your journey. You stop trying to be understood. You realize that most people operate from programming, not presence. They are still seeing through filters. They are still living through masks. And trying to explain energy shifts to someone who's still addicted to the external world is like trying to describe color to someone who's never opened their eyes. So you stop. Not from bitterness, but from wisdom. You save your energy. You protect your light. You no longer seek validation because you know that validation is the lowest form of nourishment for the soul. Let me ask you something real. What if the loneliness you feel is not abandonment but elevation? What if the universe is pulling you away from the crowd so you can hear your own soul again? So you can learn your own rhythm, your own truth, your own voice? Dark chosen ones are not born in groups. They rise in silence. They rise in the places where no one's watching. And that silence becomes sacred. It becomes the forge, the temple, the training ground. And when you emerge, you won't need applause. You'll move with a presence that makes noise unnecessary. Your relationship with time begins to shift. You stop rushing. You stop forcing. You begin to feel that things are unfolding in divine order. Sometimes painfully slow, sometimes agonizingly fast, but always with purpose. You stop living on deadlines and start living on alignment. You begin to feel when it's time to act and when it's time to wait. You stop asking how long and start asking what's the lesson here. That's not passivity, it's mastery. The dark chosen ones don't move on demand, they move in divine timing. And that timing often breaks the rules of logic. You start to notice that your energy doesn't just affect people, it affects technology, weather, even animals. Streetlights flicker when you walk by. Electronics glitch in your presence. Animals respond to you differently. Children stare at you like they see something ancient. These are not coincidences. Your frequency is recalibrating the environment. The dark chosen ones emit a signal that disrupts false grids. That signal is being noticed not just by people, but by the natural world and unseen realms. You are not just healing, you are broadcasting. And the frequency you carry is not just for you, it's for the entire field. You may begin to experience ego deaths, rapid collapses of identity, beliefs, and attachments. One day you feel certain about your path, and the next, everything feels wrong. This is part of the process. You are shedding layers that were never yours to begin with. You are no longer allowed to wear masks, even the spiritual ones. Every illusion must die so that only truth remains. And that death feels like madness at first, but it's actually divine clarity. You're not breaking down, you're breaking open. And what's being revealed underneath is something ancient, something cosmic, something undomesticated by the world. There's a point where you begin to see yourself as energy first, body second. You start feeling the shifts in your aura before you feel them in your body. You know when something's off, not because of symptoms, but because of frequency. You become your own healer, your own oracle, your own priest. You stop outsourcing your power. You stop looking for saviors. You realize the savior was always within you. And that realization changes everything. You no longer seek to be fixed, you seek to be aligned. You no longer seek to escape, you seek to embody. This path also brings a deep confrontation with your shadow. Not the version of you that's sad or insecure, but the part of you that's manipulative. The part that's addicted to control. The part that hides behind intellect or spiritual language. The dark chosen ones are not here to bypass darkness, we're here to integrate it, to bring it into the light, to sit with it, to listen to it, to love it into transformation. That's the real alchemy, not turning pain into performance, but turning fear into power. Not pretending to be holy, but becoming whole. Let me ask you from soul to soul, what parts of yourself have you been afraid to look at? What emotions have you been avoiding? What truths have you been too scared to say out loud? The path of the dark chosen one demands that you face all of it. Not to be punished, but to be purified. You are not here to be half awake. You are here to be fully embodied. And that embodiment requires radical honesty, radical healing, and radical self-responsibility. No more blaming, no more hiding, no more waiting for someone else to save you. You begin to realize that your pain was never personal. It was ancestral, collective, cosmic. You volunteered to carry it, to transmute it, to end the cycle. You are the last link in a broken chain. And sometimes that burden feels unbearable. But you were built for it, not to suffer in silence, but to alchemize it into wisdom, into power, into a new template for future generations. You are the living proof that healing is possible, that evolution is real, that light can be born in the darkest of places. You also begin to notice that your desires are changing. What once excited you now feels irrelevant. What once motivated you now feels hollow. This is not depression, it's divine detachment. You are being emptied so you can be refilled with truth, with clarity, with divine desire. You are not here to chase success, you are here to embody purpose. And that purpose will not scream for your attention. It will whisper. It will call to you in moments of stillness. And when you follow it, you'll find a level of fulfillment that the world could never offer. This journey will break you open in ways you never expected. But it will also rebuild you in ways you never imagined. You will go from victim to vessel, from seeker to source, from performer to portal. You will no longer ask for the path, you will become the path. And when that happens, you will no longer question why you were chosen. You will remember, you will embody, you will rise. At this stage of your transformation, something irreversible has occurred. You've crossed the threshold. You're no longer who you were, and you're not quite who you're becoming. There's an ache in this in-between space, and aches that comes from knowing you've outgrown the life you once lived, yet not fully seeing what's ahead. But this ache is sacred. It is the cry of the soul as it sheds its final layers of illusion. And you, as a dark chosen one, are learning to sit in that ache without rushing to fix it. You're learning to feel, to witness, to hold space for your own becoming. You're learning to trust that the void is not the end, but the birthplace of your next evolution. This is when your presence begins to change lives without effort. You walk into a room and people feel a shift. You speak a sentence and it echoes in their soul for days. You're no longer trying to make an impact, you are the impact. Because when you carry the frequency of full alignment, you become a tuning fork for everyone around you. You don't need to convince anyone of anything. Your energy speaks a language that the heart understands long before the mind catches up. And that language is ancient. It's the language of remembrance. You're not here to teach people something new. You're here to help them remember what they forgot. Your relationship with power changes entirely. You stop chasing it. You stop fearing it. You stop rejecting it. Because you realize power is not something you take. It's something you embody. And true power is quiet. It's still. It doesn't need to dominate, it simply is. You no longer need to control outcomes because you trust your alignment. You no longer need to force doors open because you are the key. You no longer need to manipulate, persuade, or hustle because your frequency magnetizes what is meant for you. This is the power of the dark chosen one, not in what we do, but in who we are. Let me ask you something that most will never consider. What if your energy is the technology of the future? What if your aura is more advanced than any artificial intelligence? What if your intuition is more accurate than any algorithm? What if your embodiment is more valuable than any currency? This is not fantasy. This is the truth that's been buried. The world has taught us to worship machines, status, and intellect. But the new earth belongs to frequency, to embodiment, to soul. And those of us who've walked through the fire to reclaim our energy know this. We are not outdated, we are ahead of our time. The dark chosen ones are not just here to awaken, they are here to anchor, to build, to recode the grid. That means we're not just meditating and floating, we're grounding. We're creating systems, structures, and spaces that reflect our soul's wisdom. We're building realities that honor truth. And that begins with how we live, how we eat, how we speak, how we love, how we move through the world. Every action becomes sacred. Every choice becomes a spell. Every breath becomes a declaration of sovereignty. You begin to attract others who carry similar codes. Not many, just a few. But when you meet them, there's no small talk. There's no fluff. It's instant resonance, deep eye contact, silent knowing. It's the energy of I see you because I am you. These are your soul mirrors, your cosmic allies. Not here to complete you, but to reflect the parts of you that you couldn't access alone. Together, you don't just talk about change, you become it. You co-create without effort. You support without controlling. You love without fear. This is sacred tribe, not made through blood, but through shared vibration. You also begin to feel the presence of your guides and higher self in a new way. Not just as signs or symbols, but as a living dialogue. You don't need to go into deep meditation to access guidance, it's always there. In the wind, in the silence, in the way someone says your name. You realize that divinity is not something you reach for, it's something you remember within. You no longer worship outside yourself. You honor all things, but you bow to nothing but the truth within. That is the mark of a true dark chosen one, reverence without dependence. And here's something you may not have expected: joy returns. Not the superficial kind, not the dopamine hit, but real, soul-level joy. The kind that emerges when you're alone at sunset and every cell in your body says yes to this moment. The kind that bubbles up for no reason. The kind that fills your heart when you're fully present. Joy that isn't loud, but radiant. You realize that joy is not the opposite of pain, it's the result of integration. After all the chaos, the grief, the letting go, something pure remains. That purity is your essence, and it sings. But even as you rise, you stay grounded. You don't float away. You don't escape into transcendence. You bring your light into the shadows. You walk into the places most avoid. You speak truth where others stay silent. You don't just meditate, you act. You don't just visualize, you build. You become the bridge between realms, the walker between worlds, the human and the divine, fully embodied. That is the final stage of the dark chosen one, not escape, but presence. Not hiding in the light, but bringing it into the darkness. So let me ask you one last question. Now that you know who you are, what will you do with it? Will you stay silent? Will you play small? Or will you rise? Fully, fiercely, fearlessly. Will you take your place in the great unfolding of this planetary shift? Because we are not waiting for leaders, we are being asked to become them. Not the kind who rule, but the kind who radiate. Not the kind who dominate, but the kind who liberate. You are not just a soul in a body. You are a multidimensional being encoded with ancient intelligence. You are here to disrupt, to awaken, to rebuild. You are here to carry the codes of the future and the wisdom of the past. You are the storm and the stillness, and the fire and the calm, the shadow and the light. You are the bridge, the blueprint, the beacon. You are a dark chosen one, and your time is now. Now go. Walk like your soul remembers, because it does.